All right, so consumable guys. The first thing we're going to cover is low NPV. Actually, you know what? Let's cover consumables and how they work first. There are different types of consumables in BDO. There's food, elixirs, and draughts. And there's perfumes. Okay, these are the three big groups that people are typically going to talk about. There might be one or there might be a few other groups like house buffs and stuff. We'll talk about those at the end. There we go. Adding it to the outline. There we go. Okay. The reason I put elixirs and draughts together is because I want you guys to understand how the different consumables interact with each other. Okay. The first thing we're going to talk about though is food. Okay. Food is interesting. Okay. So if you pop, we have what, 3 or 4 cron meals in BDO. It's just like simple, exquisite, and seafood cron meals. There's 3 cron meals in BDO. Essentially what a cron meal is it's 3 combined foods. And basically the game just allows you to pop a cron meal instead of having to run a full food rotation all the time. Okay, most people are going to run cron meals. If you pop a cron meal over the top of a food rotation, it will overwrite the food rotation. I will demonstrate. At the bottom of your screen here, this is what a food rotation in Black Desert looks like. Okay. This is a combination of, I think, 3 or 4 different foods that I have running all the time. So you'll notice that I have a special Calpheon meal running. I have a special Valencia meal. I have a special Kama Sylvia meal. And I have a special Odalita meal. Now, in order to get a food buff running, or a food, like, rotation running all the time, you basically have to pop one every, like, what, 15 or 30 minutes? Something like that. I just used a Perfume of Charm. I hate myself. Minus 20 mil. That's what I get. That is what I get. But basically, I have this running all the time on my Shy, and I just, every time I got what's minus 30 mil, yeah, there you go. I just right-click this, and it will continuously pop my food for me. But if you don't have this fairy skill called Continuous Care, I recommend seeing my fairy guide for that. It will not automatically pop for you, so you have to remember to pop these. And I think you can only pop these. They changed it recently. Yeah, it's cooldown every 30 minutes. So you can pop a new one every 30 minutes. And then basically every 120 minutes, you go back to the top of the order again. But you can run 4 foods at a time, assuming you're running the special version of every single meal. Meals in BDO have... let's look at the Calpheon meal. Actually, Valencia is probably a better example, because that's one that people actually use. There it is. So you'll notice there's a yellow grade of the Valencia meal, and that lasts for 120 minutes. And then you have the red grade of the Valencia meal. That lasts for 150 minutes. How do you get both? Well, if you're cooking, you'll naturally get the red one every so often when you're making the yellow ones. Okay, because when you're making... There's no way to just, like, recipe, like, make the red ones. You just get them with procs if you have higher cooking mastery. But, like, the red ones last for longer. And so, generally, if you're going to run a food rotation, you probably need to be running the red foods. The food rotation for a DP meme is typically Calpheon meal, special Valencia meal, special Kama meal, special Odalita meal. Okay? And if I pop a cron meal right now, it will overwrite all of this. We'll just go to the cron meal. Okay? So if I go back, I don't want to overwrite it because it will literally take away... Otherwise, I have to sit on my Shy for another 120 minutes to get the food buffs running. Like, all the food buffs running. That's the problem with the food rotation, is it takes a really, really long time to get going. The cron meal is just, boom, one and done. You could just keep repopping it once every 120 minutes or so. Understand that food in BDO, cron meals basically take priority over everything. So you'll notice I have 0 buffs on my bar on this character. If I pop a cron meal... Boom. It's only 1 meal, but it's basically got the combination of 3 meals. 3 or 4 meals. In a lot of cases, 99% of players never use a food rotation for anything. So you're basically just going to be using the cron meal. For PvE, especially low-end PvE, you want to use the simple cron meal. That's the one that looks like the yellow one. Okay? The simple cron meal is going to give you all these wonderful stats. Extra monster AP plus 30. It's important that you understand that it's not AP. Okay, so you're not popping this in PvP. Okay, that does not count as PV or AP versus players. It's just AP versus mobs. Okay. Combat EXP plus 20%, skill EXP plus 20%, attack cast speed plus 2, move speed plus 2, crit plus 2, HP plus 150, knowledge gain, knowledge chance, weight, down attack damage, damage from mobs minus 6%. That's actually really important at like mid and high tier zones if you don't have enough DP, or if you're really struggling in PvE, like the mobs are hurting a lot. You definitely want to be using a simple cron meal because that'll help a lot. And then the heat stroke resistance, nobody cares. Believe it or not, sometimes people do use the exquisite cron meal in PvE, but typically the red one, this exquisite cron meal, is typically only used in PvP. So it's got AP plus 8, accuracy plus 15, attack cast speed plus 2, move speed plus 2, crit plus 2, all evasion plus 15, max AP HP plus 150, max stamina plus 200, back attack damage plus 5%, critical hit damage plus 5%, all resistance plus 4, ignore all resist plus 4. Well, Blue, how do I know which one to use in PvE? Well, generally speaking, if you meet the soft cap for AP at your monster zone and you don't need combat EXP, you need to use the exquisite cron meal. It's just gonna be better. Okay. What does he mean by that? Oh my god, that's crazy stuff. Okay, so this monster zone info thing, and again, you can look at my my UI guide. It'll probably help you if you don't understand how to pull this up. But if you go to the different monster zones here, it'll have like recommended AP and like what your stats are. If you click like there's a if you click the refresh button on view gear stats, 550 is like what you need to grind the zone efficiently. 600 is what is like the soft cap for the grind zone. Your stats are over here. I apologize, guys. Thank you. So your stats are on this right side, and if this number is higher than these numbers over here, you'll notice that I have 793 AP against monsters here, and it's 600 is the soft cap here, so I can use the exquisite cron meal and probably do more damage. Now, that being said, it's going to depend on the monster zone that you have. If the monster zone that you're working with actually has a lot of down attack damage, simple cron meal is going to be better. Like if you can knock the mobs over and do down attack damage to them, simple cron meal is going to be better. Okay. The exquisite cron meal is going to be better for back attack damage. That's most monster zones in the game, guys. Critical hit damage plus 5% and back attack damage is almost always going to outcompete down attack damage in most cases. So like exquisite cron is really only used again when you already meet the stats for a monster zone and you are trying to basically just min-max your damage. Okay. Okay. So that's food. Okay, so cron meals will always overwrite normal food buffs, and they're basically a combination of all the food buffs. I highly recommend constantly eating food, guys, because eating food increases your health gauge here. And the higher your health gauge, like every time you get a health level, it actually increases your max HP. So like every 30 minutes, you want to repop your cron meal. Or pop a food of some kind. You'll notice that if I pop a food right now that is not a cron meal, it will not overwrite the cron meal. Okay, so if I pull a Calpheon meal out of my storage and I pop it, you'll notice that she sat down to eat. I got some health EXP for it, or in this case, I didn't get health EXP because I just popped the cron meal. But like she sat down to eat, but you'll notice the buff at the bottom of the bar didn't change. I actually just wasted that cron meal. I mean, I wasted that Calpheon meal because I already had a cron meal running. Cron meals always overwrite your food buffs in every case. Okay, it's exactly the same for elixirs and draughts, which is what we're going to talk about next. So you can pop elixirs or draughts. Okay, similar to food buffs, foods you can pop cron meal, or you can pop actual foods and rotate like 4 foods of your choosing. Okay, for elixirs, you can like specialize the elixirs that you would like to do, or you can pop a drought. Okay, if you pop a drought, it will overwrite all elixirs that you currently have. Okay, so in PvE, I highly recommend most players are going to be running a drought most of the time in PvE. So we're going to cover the droughts first. In low-end PvE, you are only going to be running this one. This is called Beast Drought. Okay, extra AP to mobs plus 15, you're probably not going to need the AP to mobs at low end spots like Desert Nagas, Desert Fogans, trees, things like this. You're really looking at the combat EXP. Like when you're a new player and you're grinding those low end spots, you're really trying to get your player or your characters to level 62 to level 63 for the first time. So that combat EXP is definitely a nice bonus. 1 HP per hit is kind of nice. Damage reduction to monsters minus 10% is really, really nice as well. So like, if you're really squishy at a monster zone, this is kind of the drought that you really want to use. Like if you're moving up to a monster zone before you're kind of the DP's kind of there, popping a simple cron meal and a beast drought is kind of like the safe mode. Pronounce it draft. Have mercy on my ears. That's true. Okay, I will say for the purposes of the guide, I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be pronounced draft. But everybody in the BDO community started calling it a drought, and we're so committed at this point that there's no turning back. It is what it is. For those of you wondering what the immortal version of a drought does, or of a draft does, I apologize. But the immortal version of a draft, I can't do it. Basically, if you die while the drought is running, the drought will keep running when you respawn. Okay. It like that's all it is. You're really just not going to use immortal drafts in PvE unless you're planning on dying a lot. Okay, it's not a thing. The immortal aspect of a draft is really only used in PvP. Okay, so don't worry about this. That's the reason. It costs way more money as well. There is a 1 hour version called the Magical Beast Draft. Okay, and you can make all elixirs magical, and it'll last 60 minutes. So if you don't have continuous care for your fairy, this auto use items function, this 60-minute thing is actually pretty good. What's the thing that you use to turn Iridas? It's called Magical Elixir. Okay. All right, and you can turn drafts into the magical version of the draft, so like the 60-minute version. If you simple alchemy with this magical elixir and you use like any of the normal droughts. Okay. Yeah, it's a W. It's nice. It is nice. Okay. The other drafts in the game. This is the life skilling one. Don't even worry about that. That's for losers. Again, this is the low end PvE one, and if you're trying to play on safe mode, like if you're grinding at a spot that like really is high damage for where you are, this is the safe drought. The Giants draft is the draft that you would pop. It's very similar to the simple. The difference between the simple cron meal and the exquisite cron meal, this is almost exactly the same. Extra special attack damage. Okay. Special attack damage in BDO can be kind of a confusing thing for a new player if you don't understand what it is. Okay. In Black Desert, there's a lot of different ways to hit somebody. You can critically strike them, back attack, air attack, down attack, normal attack from the front that doesn't crit. Yeah, there's all kinds of different modifiers you can have. All of them are special attacks. Okay. So the vast majority of the hits that you give to someone, unless you're hitting them from the front and not critically striking, are all special attacks. Okay, so when it says all special attack damage plus 10%, you should view that as, okay, that's just plus 10% more damage. Okay, that's really good. It doesn't have any monster damage on it, though. Okay, it does have move speed, critical hit rate, stamina, HP, and then it's got 10 AP on there as well. Again, the difference between AP against mobs and the difference between just all AP. All AP applies to everything in the game, mobs and PvP. AP against mobs doesn't apply in PvP. Okay, so if you already reach like the soft cap for the monster zone that you're at, we talked about that before. Giant's Draft is going to do you a lot of good. It'll probably do more damage than the Beast Drought, almost certainly. And like the difference is you're going to feel squishier than if you had the Beast Drought on. Okay, so like if you're still at risk of dying, Beast Drought's still probably a better option. But if you don't feel like you're going to die and you're already at like the caps for the zone, Giant's Draft is a great way to improve your silver per hour. There's also Frenzy Draft. This is the one, I would say this is probably the most common draft that grinders use. You should not use this at any You should not use this at any low-end grind zones, okay? So like any of the Valencia desert spots, none of like the Kamasilvia zones or any of the potion zones, like any of those low-end spots. This is strictly the only times you're really going to start using frenzy drafts are when you're grinding the mid-tier zones like Orcs, Serendia Elvia, Underwater Sakraya, things like that. Okay, that's when you're really going to start thinking about using the frenzy draft. Okay, there is a better version of the frenzy draft down here called the frenzy draft of corruption, which you can buy. It costs slightly more money, but you'll notice the difference here. Frenzy draft, well, actually, let's go over the difference between frenzy and the normal. Okay, so frenzy draft has AP to mobs plus 30. You're like, oh wait, that's way higher than 15. Yeah, it's going to do way more damage. All accuracy plus 12, max stamina plus 200. It also gets 3 HP per hit, so you recover HP very quickly. Like when you hit stuff. All DP minus 15 though. So again, if you're already a squishy class going in, the frenzy drought is kind of risky. You're basically, as long as you're always hitting something, you should be tanky enough to tank through it. You should be just fine. But like if you're not hitting stuff and the mobs hit you, it's gonna be hurting. Critical hit damage plus 10%. Most of the things you do in PvE are going to crit, so you're gonna be just fine there. And then weight plus 100, yeah, whatever. Very importantly, this one has 3 critical hit rate on it, so plus 3 crit. Okay, this one does not have plus 3 crit on it. It's very, very important that when you are grinding, that you have plus 5 crit on all the time. Okay, this bar right here, you hit P, you click on battle stats. This needs to be at plus 5. Okay. For this reason, most of the people that are running Frenzy Drought also run something called Spirit Perfume Elixir. Spirit Perfume Elixir gives you plus 5 crit, so they don't have to worry about crit rate that they lose on the Beast Drought, and they're doing more damage with the Frenzy Draft. So this is why you see Frenzy and Spirit Perfume used basically in conjunction with one another all the time. We'll get into more about Spirit Perfume in a little bit, but that's why you see those two comboed with each other basically all the time. There is an upgraded version of the Frenzy Draft. You're going to be... Okay, so again, Frenzy does more damage than Beast Drought does. Beast Drought's kind of like the bitch mode / low-end PvE grind zone thing. Or if you're poor. Frenzy Draft is going to do more damage than that, but like... And then Giant Drought versus Frenzy... That's going to come down to your class versus how efficient you are at your class. Usually, like, if you're already at, like, the monster, like the soft cap for it, well, the Frenzy Draft's not going to help you anymore. So, again, the Giant's Draft's going to help more because it's giving you percentage special attack damage. And then all AP plus 10, all that good stuff. But, like, most people are going to be using Frenzy in PvE once you hit Serendia, Elvia, and upwards. Okay. There's also the upgraded version of the Frenzy. This gives it 5 more AP, and I'm pretty sure everything else is exactly the same. It looks like everything else is basically exactly the same, but it gives it 5 more AP. This is called the Frenzy Draft of Corruption. I'm just gonna say Drought, guys. I'm kind of all over the place. Frenzy Drought of Corruption. All AP plus 35. Okay, it's literally just plus 5 more AP. You'll notice that it also costs a lot more money too, but you will clear... Well, actually, it costs a little bit more money, but it's tougher to get. The way you get these is you combine a normal Frenzy Draft. I don't know, guys. Honestly, it's a choose your own adventure. It's a choose your own adventure. I don't know anymore. With Corrupted Breath. This stuff. Okay? This stuff drops from Calpheon Elvia. Okay? And it drops so frequently that it's usually minned out. So, like... Ideally, you would just buy your Frenzy Draft and then combine it with Corrupted Breath with Simple Alchemy. Okay, and then you would just have a better Frenzy Draft. Okay, but essentially, they're the same thing. Okay. Really, there's only a few other types of drafts in the game. This is for horse training. Don't worry about that. But if you are training a horse, Celerity Draught's really good. Armor Draft is... Man, I'm really kind of just back and forth with the draft thing. This is only really used for full DP memes. Do not use this in PvE. I don't know of anyone that uses this in PvE unless they're at like Crypt or something and they don't have enough DP for Crypt. But like essentially this just... Yeah, it's all AP minus 15, but it makes you really tanky. It's good in PvP if you're a full DP meme. It's not good at basically anything else, so don't worry about it. Okay, so there's Frenzy. Oh yeah, you can... So you can turn your drafts into frenzies, right? That upgrades from the normal frenzy draft into the frenzy, and then you can upgrade it into the immortal one. The immortal one, again, do not use immortal drafts for PvE. Okay, immortal is exactly that. If you die, the draft keeps going, but you're not going to die in PvE because you're a gamer. Okay, really the one you're looking for is magical, and you want to turn it into the magical version of it, and you get those through like login rewards and various things. We talked about that before. Okay, so those are the different drafts that you're gonna like potentially could use in PvE. And then in high-end PvE monster zones, guys, you're using the frenzy after, like the frenzy drought every time. If you're using like a normal frenzy, that's only because you couldn't make it. I don't know why you would not have. Yeah, you should always be using the frenzy version of, or the corrupted version of frenzy draft. Perfumes and BDO are separate than everything else. No matter what you're running, doesn't matter if you're running a cron meal and a drought. Okay, you can always run one perfume of your choice. It is expensive to run perfumes, but they are good and they will help you grind faster. Okay, you want to run a different perfume depending on which grind zone that you are at. Okay, there are 4 different types of perfumes in the game that are actually particularly good here. Perfume of Courage is something that I do not recommend anyone run at their grind zone unless you're at the high-end grind zones and you're trying to reach like a really high soft cap. Like if you're at the Ulakita grind zones or any of the Dekia spots, Perfume of Courage is totally fine if you're above 700 gear score grinding those spots. But if you're at like the mid-tier spots, like Orcs, Serendia Elvia, even Calpheon Elvia, or anything below that, you should not be running Perfume of Courage because you can just reach those AP caps with like your normal buffs. You should not have to run this. In PvE, most people are going to be running, yeah, I already did the dev note today. Spirit Perfume Elixir. This is amazing. This is the elixir of choice for all low and mid-end grind zones. And the reason is actually it's different. For low-end grind zones, the reason you're running this is actually the Recover 3 MP WP SP on hit there. If anyone has ever struggled at mana at grind zones, you will never struggle with mana again if you're running Spirit Perfume Elixir. Essentially, every time you hit something, you get a bunch of mana back. So, like, Spirit Perfume Elixir is incredibly good because you don't have to manage mana potions, which means you don't have to worry about that weight. You don't have to worry about juggling those. If you don't have an infinite mana potion, Spirit Perfume Elixir is absolutely your go-to supplement for it. This is the mana potion at home for you. Okay, at mid-tier grind zones, like I said, people start popping the frenzy draft, and the reason they pop this is for the crit rate. Then it's less so, honestly. Yeah, they get mana back too. Yeah, that's great and everything, but because you stand and have to combo a little bit more at those spots, at least on some classes, the critical hit rate +5 is probably more important there, because frenzy draft again does not give you any critical hit rate. You need to make sure your crit rate is at +5. Okay, so like if you're running a frenzy, you got to be running Spirit Perfume with it just to get that crit rate. Okay, the bracing Spirit Perfume Elixir gives you +5. Like it's really the only difference between these two is that the bracing Spirit Perfume gives you 5 more monster damage to mobs. It is, however, a lot more expensive, and so yeah, you can see how much more expensive. It's 5 times as expensive as the normal Spirit Perfume is. So like typically people are just not running this, like, unless the only reason I see people typically running the bracing is because the normal stuff is sold out. That's usually why people do it. Obviously the immortal one stays through death. People do use Spirit Perfume Elixir, like the immortal Spirit Perfume in Node War and Siege. It's a pretty solid capped PvP elixir. I mean, perfume. Okay. It says Spirit Perfume Elixir. This is a perfume. I don't care what it says, it's a perfume. Okay, so this will count as a perfume. The other, like, let's see, then there's Perfume of Courage. We talked about that. That's basically the go-to if you're at like a really high-end grind zone and you don't have enough AP to reach that soft cap that we talked about before. Obviously, Perfume of Courage is... it's a lot of money. I'm just going to warn you right now, this is 90 million silver an hour to keep running. Yeah, you can see it's pretty much always going to be maxed out at 30 mil a piece. And perfumes last for 20 minutes at a time. So like you're going to be popping 3 an hour. That's 90 mil an hour right off the top of your money. Spirit Perfume is like 1 million in elixir, or 3 million in elixir, whatever. It's way less expensive, so that's the one that most people choose to use. There's also something called Elixir of Deep Sea, and I know it says elixir, but it is not an elixir. This is also a perfume. This is the best perfume in the game at all forms of everything. It is better in PvE. It is the best perfume in PvE. It's the best perfume in PvP. It doesn't matter. It is literally the best at everything. And because it is the best at everything, everybody always wants this elixir, or everybody always wants this perfume. It is just ridiculously good. It gives you back attack damage plus 10%, down attack damage plus 10%, air attack damage plus 10%, all AP plus 10, max AP plus HP plus 100, and max stamina plus 100 as well. It is really, really good. It's extremely difficult to make. The only way you're typically going to get Elixir of Deep Sea is through like Guild League rewards, AOS rewards, things like of that nature. If you want to make it yourself, you have to go hunt whales on the ocean, and it is extremely difficult and time consuming and cumbersome. Really, really annoying. You also need Oil of the Abyss. You need the limiting reagent for this. If anyone knows what a limiting reagent is, the limiting factor is probably the easier way of saying it for the non-science majors in the chat. But the limiting factor for the recipe for Elixir of Deep Sea is called Coral Crystal. I do have some. This is extremely rare. It is only obtained through underwater gathering, and typically it's obtained from crocs because it drops from like the really high level boat stuff in the game like once or twice an hour. It's really, really difficult to get, and like you're just not going to get it. So the only way you're really going to get this is turning in medals for PvP or doing some sort of PvP content in the game. So typically Elixir of Deep Sea, and honestly Elixir of Deep Sea in PvE is not necessarily a bad option. You know you're probably not going to die. You're going to get your full use out of it. The problem with using it in PvP is inevitably you pop Elixir of Deep Sea and then somebody like Neptune's comes up behind you and two-shots you on his Mayo and says good fight. Like that's like it's a frustrating, and then boom, minus 30 mil is like really frustrating. So like don't necessarily recommend popping this, even though it is the best in PvE, because you're only going to have just a few of them. But if you really want to go hard for an hour, this is definitely the perfume you're using. Are there any perfumes that I missed? Swiftness is the life skilling perfume. Oh, Perfume of Charm. This is the DP meme perfume. Okay, it gives you special attack evasion rate plus 10%. Remember earlier we talked about special attack damage? Okay, well, special attack evasion rate is the opposite. Okay, so special attacks are critical hit rate, critical hits, air attacks, down attacks, back attacks, anything that's not hitting you from the front and not critically striking. Special attack evasion rate is your chance of dodging those abilities. Okay, so like if you have 30% special attack evasion rate, you have a 30% chance to dodge their attack, like all of their damage. It's really good. There is like special attack like penetration for this, so like you can't, like you can stack it up to like 46, 50%, something like some obscene number like that. But Perfume of Charm is usually what DP memes use. Nobody else really uses this stuff. Calc Elixir, yep, that's another perfume. I forgot about that. Calc Elixir is an elixir only used in PvP. You're really not going to use this at all in PvE. It gives you 10% resistances, 15 damage reduction, 100 HP, and 5% move speed. This is a... If you don't have Spirit Perfume Elixir, you can pop Calx Elixir. It's totally fine in capped PvP content. We're going to go over the different consumables for each type of content, and I will recommend Calx for a couple things like that. The only time you're running Calx in PvE is when you need the 10% resistances. There are certain monster zones that people are going to run elixirs at. This is for normal parties. Okay, so if you're party grinding at a party grind zone, typically Party grind zones are going to be 3 people grind zones. If they're 2 people grind zones, you'd run these same elixirs, but across 2 people. So whoever has what, you just pop them. Just don't overlap them. Okay. When you are in a party with other players, elixirs will trade through to them. Okay. There's no such thing anymore as party elixirs. All elixirs will pop for your party members as well when you pop them. Very importantly, understand, guys, that if you pop a draft and you have elixirs running, the draft will pop over your elixirs. So if somebody pops a bunch of elixirs, I'm going to pop a swiftness. I'm going to pop perforation. Sure, I'll pop a steel defense as well. You see these 3 elixirs are on the bottom here. If I now go and I pop a draft, you'll notice how it just popped it over the top of it. And then if I try to pop elixirs now, if I try to pop another swiftness here, it won't pop over the top of it. Okay, so if you pop a draft, you are griefing in group PvE if you're popping elixirs. Do not accidentally pop a draft, okay? It's drafts or elixirs. Most people are going to pop draughts, and that's just how it goes because it's cheaper. It's way easier to manage. You don't have to worry about a bunch of cooldowns and stuff. The only time you're ever using elixirs is in group, like party grind zones, or if you're trying to be hyper efficient in high-end solo grinding. Elixir of Sharp Detection. This is critical hit damage. Elixir of Advanced Concentration, I'm fairly certain, is accuracy. Endless Fury is AP. Strong Life, I think, is HP. I think it's 150 HP. Yeah, accuracy. Yeah, we're good. Okay. Strong Draining. Draining, Soul Reapers, Perforation, Shock, and Swiftness. Grim Soul Reapers is basically HP back on hit. Shock is +3 critical, +3 crit. So again, we talked about like your critical hit counter. When you are grinding, guys, it's very important that your critical hit is maxed out at 5. If your class scales on attack speed, that your attack speed is maxed out at 5, or if your class scales on cast speed, it is maxed out at 5. Which scales on cast speed? So it's +5 cast speed. We're good to go, right? On classes that scale on attack speed, it'll say attack speed there instead. But it's very important that attack speed or cast speed and crit are maxed out. Move speed's like whatever, who cares? Also, luck is really important too, and you guys can see what these do if you just mouse over them. This is 18% crit to basically everything in your skill kit, which is extremely important for PvE. Luck is literally 12.5% item drop rate. If you don't have +5 luck, you're griefing. Okay, you need to have 5 luck. However, you got to get there. Okay. Okay, so draining. Draining is recover 5 HP for critical hit. Grim Reapers is again HP per hit, I think. Yeah, it's just per hit, like I said. Perforation is defense nullifying damage +10 per pack attack. That probably sounds pretty confusing. The important thing that you understand is that no one understands what that means, but we think that you're doing more damage with it. Elixir of Strong Shock is +3 crit. As we talked about before, Elixir of Intrepid Swiftness is +3 move speed. Again, defense nullifying +10% per back attack. We think what that means is they have less defense against your back attack damage. That's what we think it means. We're not entirely certain, but we're like pretty sure. How you doing, Audrey? Like 50-50. We've only been playing the game for 8 years. Like, it is what it is. Okay. So again, here's the different elixir setup rotations for the different grind zones that you run at. The Dekia Olens, this is actually really good. Because you can use this if you guys are grinding at a 2-player grind zone and you really want to be efficient. You could do this at like Dekia Turos as well. Or you could do it at like Abandoned Monastery is also a good spot for this, right? You do not always have to use elixirs at a grind zone, but if one of you is running elixirs, all of you have to run elixirs, okay? And it's just, if you're that person that shows up with no elixirs and allows your other like person to carry you, you're a terrible human being, okay? Make sure you show up with the proper elixirs in every case. Strong Griffin Elixir is something we haven't talked about. That is Kama Sylvia damage. That's probably the toughest elixir to get in the whole game for PvE. They made it a little bit easier recently with a Griffin change, but it's still... You can see how expensive it is and how difficult it is to make. So my recommendation is, if you're a new player, if you're grinding Manchums, the daily for Manchums, if you go to the node manager guy right here, okay, that guy, he has a daily that gives you 3 Griffin Elixirs every day. Take that, and you can either sell it or keep them. Okay. Green Elixirs can be made into blue Elixirs. So if you have the green version of an Elixir, you can upgrade it to the blue version via simple alchemy in game. It's really easy. It's called Blue Reagent. You just buy it from a vendor. Brutal Death, I think, is back attack damage. Brutal Perforation is... No, I'm sorry. Brutal Death is defense nullifying damage plus 10 per critical hit. And again, we're like 30% sure that that means that they have less resistance to your crit damage. Okay. Like your critical hit damage. The moral of story, you're doing more damage. Brutal Death is a great elixir. You do more damage with Brutal Death. Lethal Assassin is the back attack damage one. I apologize. Remarkable Will is... damage received from monsters minus 10%. That's very important for any high-end duo or trio spot. Steel Defense is DR. It's like plus 10 DR or something. I think I covered them all. I think we're good. Elixir of Endless Frenzy, that should be AP. Draining, yeah, we covered this. Sharp Resistance, that gives you resistance in PvE. And if you're wondering how to get these, Overwhelming Endurance, I'm pretty sure that's stamina. So obviously, guys, you can just not use some of these. Like, you don't need to have stamina elixirs. You don't need to have, like, every little elixir. But, like, the very important ones, like Elixir of Destruction is also extremely important. Okay? This is plus 2 special attack damage. We talked about special attack damage before. If you have more special attack damage, you basically just have more damage. You're just doing 2% more damage. Like, it is what it is. I will send, I will put, like, links to this stuff in the video description as well here. Okay. Alright. So that's PvE grinding like consumables if you're using elixirs. Again, most people are going to use drafts. And most people are just going to use, like, if you're a low-end player, Simple Cron Meal, Beast Drought, and we're gaming. Okay? Simple Cron Meal, Beast Drought. Okay? Another thing to remember is your scrolls. Those I'm going to count as consumables. If you're trying to maximize your EXP buffs, guys, I'm going to very quickly cover how you do that. Okay? Number 1, there's a Takros Spirit Stone. Okay? This is an alchemy stone that all seasonal and new players will have. Remember the Takros Stone, that's 50% combat EXP. There is Book of Combat. Okay? This can be popped as long as you don't also have... There's like the 1 hour like combat scrolls that have like 100% combat EXP on them. Those can't overlap, and it'll warn you before you pop it. It'll be like, hey, this doesn't overlap with the other thing you have running. So, like, Book of Combat's usually the one that I like. Understand that when you open a Book of Combat, you can pop it on every single character and have the buff running. So I recommend doing that. As far as scrolls go, if you're a new player, you need to hit F3, go to your Loyalties tab. In your Loyalties tab, you will have these things. These are 530 scrolls. They're 1 loyalty for 530% combat EXP, 530% skill EXP. Absolutely need to be running these. You get 53 of them. Don't ask me why. That's just what they chose. Okay, you get 53 of them, 530%. That's one of the most important things. The game is also going to give you something called a Blessed Message Scroll. Okay, you should pop those too. Those are a dime a dozen. If you hit your Y menu, you will get your Mercenaries EXP. Plus, I recommend always taking the combat one. Is really good. If you're a life skiller, sure, you can technically take this, but I still think that having those on hand is really good. And the reason is the mercenary ones can be combined together. If you have 3 of them, you can combine them to be a 600% 1 hour scroll. And that stacks with the 530 scroll. So if you get 3 of them, you just combine them together. Boom, that's 600% combat EXP, plus the 530 scroll, plus the Blessed Message, plus the Book of Combat. and any other event consumables that you might have. Most of my event consumables are sitting in our on Kado. Okay, so you can see like sometimes you get event consumables that will give you drop rate, like EX combat EXP, etc. You can pop any of those that you have as well. The Kama Sylvia blessings, I believe, do not. I think the value pack gives you like 100% combat EXP or something, or like 50% combat EXP, something like that. And so does the Secret Book of Old Moon, I think gives, yeah, it gives 100% combat EXP. The value pack gives something 30%. Yeah, value pack's 30%. Book of Old Moon's 100. And you should have those as a new player. They just give them to you. They give you a bunch of those. There's also, if you open your Black Spirits and you are above level 50, you can click exchange and you can exchange here. I don't recommend doing the skill EXP exchange, but there's a combat EXP exchange. You get 20% combat EXP for 60 minutes. This is really, really good because, like, honestly, your energy is probably going to be maxed out anyway. If you don't have the energy, obviously don't worry about it. There's also your artifact setup, which, if you have, is it this one? Yep. So I have 2 of these. If you put on 2 artifacts, it's just 4 combat EXP lightstones. It's combat lightstones. You can get these on the marketplace. They're super cheap, guys. And just throw them in. This is like a super cheap way to get a lot of EXP super quickly. Okay, so there's none on the market, but they sell super quickly. You can see that 288,000 have been sold. You'll get them basically instantly. Just buy 4 of these and throw them into 2 random artifacts of your choosing. And you'll notice that it's a 300% set bonus on top of the 100% that you get from the lightstones themselves. So you're getting 400% from combat EXP from artifacts like lightstones and stuff. Yeah, the artifacts don't matter. Exactly. That's why I said just throw them into any artifact set. No big deal. Just toss them in there and you're gaming. They're super cheap. You can't go wrong. Another thing that you want to look at is your PvE, or like if you're looking for combat EXP, is your crystals. All of those Kydic crystal adventures that you get as a new player should absolutely just slot them in. No big deal. You're probably not going to have a gear insteer. That is totally fine. These are really expensive. I don't expect a new player to have those. But the resplendent Kydics are really good. Just toss those in there and you'll be fine. If you're looking for a really cheap tier that will also give you like some combat EXP and stuff, I recommend the Bong Wong's tier. This is the poor man's tier. You just buy this. Alternatively, you can buy the separated version of this. You can buy these too, but like they don't give the combat EXP and stuff. But like, yeah, I'll do a separate crystal guide. But yeah, that's just make sure you remember all of that stuff for combat EXP. Also, there's church buffs and villa buffs. So if you have your tent, so your tent has buffs at it. Villa is extremely important for multiple reasons. Obviously, AP plus 10, DP plus 10, max HP plus 200, all resistance plus 10%, ignore all resist plus 5%. Slam dunk, guys. You should be running this in PvE. You should be running this in PvP. I don't really care. I run it while I'm AFK processing. Not really. But like, if your dick is hanging out, you're running it even when you're AFK. But like, really, you're basically always running the Villa body enhancement is super good. If your life skilling turning gates is obviously going to be better. There are a lot of villas in BDO. This is the only one that matters because it's the closest one to civilization. If you guys are broke boys and can't afford the Secret Book of Old Moon, you can literally just put an alt at this villa right here and just buy a villa invitation from the villa keeper and then just transfer it to whatever character you need it with the Magnus. You can literally just type in command find villa and you can just pull your villa invitation off if you have one and then just transfer it wherever you need to, which is why the Secret Book of Old Moon is really not required at all for players, and why players tell you not to buy it necessarily. Also, before you start grinding, and I know I'm going to get questions like this, it's the 50 mil tent buff every time. It doesn't matter what grind zone you're at. The 50 mil tent buff is always going to be worth it unless you're already over the cap. Okay. just pop it. I'm just going to save you. The people have done the math. Just pop the 50 mil one. Unless you're at the cap already. Okay. Now we're looking at horse buffs. I happen to have all 3 Krogdalo sets. There are 3 Krogdalo sets in this game. These are horse gear sets that will give you buffs if you have the 5 set effect. The earth set gives you, I think, 3 evasion and like 3 DP or something. Yeah, it's 3 damage reduction and 3 evasion to yourself and 10 allies for 60 minutes. You can use this basically every time you regroup in large scale PvP. Okay. That's the earth one. That's the worst one. That's the one that most people do not have. I actually run it in barcode because most people don't have it. And so like I run it because everyone else, obviously they don't stack with each other. So if somebody pops the HP one and the rest of us have the HP one, it doesn't matter. Right. But if one of us has earth, one of us has sea, and the other one has wind. Okay. Well then all of us get all 3 buffs. It's really good. So I'm typically running earth in uncapped PvP. Because again, it helps everybody and nobody really has earth. The best one is the sea. And I believe that's what the one that my horse is wearing right now. Yes. So if I hit the space bar, you can see on my buff bar right there, this is what it looks like. All 3 buffs kind of behave like this. But you get 100 stamina and 100 HP. This is widely considered the best in PvP for capped and uncapped content. This is just very, very good. There is a wind one as well, which just gives you a flat 5 AP. I wonder if I can find it with my... yeah, it's not going to find it with the item finder because I think it might be on a horse. It might be on my other horse. But there's a wind Krogdalo set too. It's probably on my other horse, and so the item finder won't find it. But essentially it just gives you 5 AP. Obviously, that one is really good in PvE. That's why most people make the wind one first. Okay. And it's really easy to make or buy. It's very expensive though if you're gonna buy it. But like, it's a pain in the ass to make these. It is really, really a pain in the ass to make Krogdalo gear. It does sit on the market every once in a while. If you put orders on the wind stuff, you will absolutely get the wind stuff. You can see there's plenty of trades for it because you can turn in your Shikatu seals to get this stuff. I recommend getting the wind first because again, it's plus 5 AP. That helps you in PvE. It helps you in uncapped PvP. Can't really go wrong with it. But for capped PvP content, the sea stuff is definitely the best. Ocean's Roar is easily the best. And then of course, the earth one is kind of mid, but like, you know, you pop it if everybody else in your guild has the other 2 buffs covered, you're fine. If you open up your NPC finder like this, you can actually just click on this and it will take you to your closest church vendor. The church vendors are in every single major town in BDO. So no matter where you are, there should be a church vendor relatively close to you. And you can just path to it. But when you open this up, there are 3 buffs here. Okay. And they go for varying minutes. Okay. I am going to buff myself. I'm just going to do the 120 for attack, protection. And then most importantly, if you're looking for EXP buffs, boom, there's an EXP one as well. And you just pay a certain amount of silver, depending on the duration of the buff that you want. And at the bottom of your screen, you can see you get AP and accuracy plus 8. You get damage reduction plus 8, HP plus 150, and then you get 15% combat and skill EXP as well. Really, really good. Really, really good. So remember your church buffs as well. And I'm pretty sure that is all. Oh, yeah. Make sure you have the correct pets out. If you're getting power leveled, pets can be a lot of combat EXP. You'll notice that my pets are 16% plus 25. It's like 30. It's like 41% combat EXP. I happen to have tier 4 pets that give me combat EXP. So like I get a lot of extra combat EXP when I'm grinding anyway. So like just make sure that your combat EXP pets are out as well. There's also, yeah, birthday cakes in the residence. We're going to go over house buffs later. But like, yeah, there are house buffs that exist that will give you all kinds of different buffs in the game. We're going to go over those at the end though. So you walk in here, it looks like a scene out of Breaking Bad. I understand there's a lot of stuff on the wall. Either this is what most residents in BDOs look like. Either it's a scene out of Breaking Bad, or you look like you're in Gaston's hunting lodge from Beauty and the Beast, and that's totally fine. There are different buffs from basically every single thing in the entire game. These ones sitting on the floor here are the Verter Buck. This gives me 20 evasion for like 1 hour. That's for GVGs. This one gives me 20 accuracy for an hour. I have one that gives me, this one gives me accuracy, Breath Imbued Stuffed Boar Head gives me accuracy for 3 hours. It's 20 accuracy for 3 hours. So some house buffs will pop for 1 hour, some will pop for 2, some will pop for 3. Okay, and you kind of just have to read the item. There are lists of this online. I do not have a compendium compiled currently of all the different house buffs in the game. For PvE, I strongly recommend, oh my god, turn all of it. Oh my god, I'm naked. Okay, there we go. I meant to just turn off all my other stuff. For PvE, I recommend just buying camel statues. These give you plus 9 AP for 60 minutes, and they're really cheap. Keep in mind you spell camel K-A-M-E-L, camel statue. Okay, these things, well, they used to be a lot cheaper, so maybe not. They give you 10 charges, so it's only 6 million for about 9 AP. That's not bad at all. It's like super fine. Super fine. So like, yeah, camel statues are great if you're looking for cheap PvE buffs. You can also go with these over here on the wall. These give you plus 15 AP. This is the Master Special Stuff Shadow Wolf Lion Head or whatever the hell. This is more expensive per use, but you know, what is what it is. Again, there's a lot of repeat buffs in the game. If you're looking for one specific buff, there's probably 3 different types of furniture that will give you that buff. You just have to do the research to find it, right? So the Altar Imp, this Altar Imp Captain's Knife gives you plus 15 AP for an hour, for example. That gives you plus 15 AP for like 3 hours. I don't know. Right? Okay. So yeah, there's just a ton of different stuff. I recommend just find a buff that you really want. For PvE, I mean for PvP, like cat PvP, you can't go wrong with max HP. Okay? Max HP is just the slam dunk. You don't have to worry about it. Oh, we'll go over Alchemy Stones real quick. Obviously, make sure your Alchemy Stone is running while you're grinding and doing PvP. Like, even if you don't care about the AP, the attack cast speed that it gives you is absolutely worth like having running on basically every class in the game. If you're a low-end grinder, you want to pop Spirit Stones. Destruction Spirit Stone is the go-to for low-end grinders in the game. Just make sure it's running all the time. When it expires, do not just throw it away. Grind it up. Hit L, okay? Grind, and you can grind it even if it has 0 durability, and it will turn into Mythical Spirit Powder, which you can use to gas up your Vel's Heart when you get it someday. This stuff is tough to obtain, and you'll be doing yourself a favor if you grind it, even when it's a 0 durability. Okay. Oh, yeah, make sure you get the blue Destruction Spirit Stone, not the green one. That one's garbage. Okay, so you can see there's a blue grade. Oh, garbage. You want the one that gives you attack cast speed plus 4%. Okay. Yeah, the AP is great too, but like you want the blue one, right? Splurge a little bit. Get the blue one. You'll be fine. Now there are NPCs in the game that will give you buffs. Okay. So the most important NPC is up here. Fortunately, she's a relatively cheap hooker. You talk to her. This is Carolyn. She's kind of a honey. In order for her to give you a buff, you have to wave at her a few times, and then she starts putting out for you for the rest of time. It's really nice. She's really cheap. So you can basically just hit F5 and wave at her a few times, like 5-6 times. You need like 25 or 30 amity with her. It's really easy. You just keep hitting F5, and then eventually you have enough amity with her. You do this, you click chat, and then she gives you Carolyn's Kindness. Carolyn's Kindness allows you to slaughter your enemies more efficiently, because that's how kind Carolyn is. She likes brutally slaughtering people. This is a buff that you can get for PvE and PvP, and it is the singular best NPC buff in the entire game for 99.9% of all players. It gives you critical hit damage plus 10%. We talked about that for the detection elixir before. This is why right before a node war, you see everyone huddled in front of this woman. She loves the attention. She is just a whore for attention. It's crazy. There's hundreds of people huddled in front of Carolyn. Right before the node war starts, you'll see people chat with her, and then it's only a 30-minute buff. And so then they'll go into node war, and then they have this 10% critical hit damage buff for the next 30 minutes. It's also really good in PvE and will dramatically affect your first 30 minutes of your PvE as well. So like you can take the buff, and then if you really want to get sweaty, you can tag over to your other character, ride to your grind zone, then tag back to your normal character so you don't waste any minutes, and then start grinding. There is one more NPC buff that I do want to go over, but that one is Invelia. This is Alustin the Alchemist. Okay, he can also give you a buff from an NPC. Okay, you click chat with him. Again, you have to have a certain amount of amity with him, so you can just wave at him a few times. You can obviously see that the reason that people are not here as frequently is because Carolyn is way hotter. But But like if you click Elixir of Last Resort, he will give you a plus 100 max HP buff for 30 minutes. And again, the HP, the crit damage buff is just considered better by a lot of players. The only reason that you're going to pop this is if you're a full DP meme. If you're a full DP meme and you're just trying to stay alive, this is obviously the buff that you would like to do. There are multiple other NPC buffs in the game. If if you get a certain amount of amity with an NPC, they'll give you a certain buff for a certain amount of time. As far as I'm aware, none of them stack, so you just have to choose one. That's why everybody typically chooses Carolyn, because hers is the best. But yeah, there are also guild buffs that you will see on your bar. These are in this menu here. If you're in a guild, this is why being in a guild is important. And having guild buffs are important, because when you're in a guild, you get 5% evasion, 5 DR, 100 max HP, 5 AP, and 5% accuracy just for being in a guild passively. Okay, then you can get 200% more combat EXP, 50% more skill EXP, 10% more drop rate, and also 40% more life EXP. If you're a life skiller, you can also have gathering. There's fishing down here. There's trading. And then these are knowledge buffs. Both of these can be popped, believe it or not. This one is knowledge gain chance plus 15%. This is the chance to obtain higher knowledge plus 2%. So, like, being in a guild is extremely important. I highly recommend getting involved in one. If you don't have a guild, I have a guild called Reassembled that I run. I have an alt account. It's basically a PVX, 0 requirements. There's always people hanging out in Discord. There's people online all the time. You can always ask for help. There's always people to do stuff with. They do guild bosses every week. And I basically, like, try to help run that out of my Discord all the time. The GM, technically, but admittedly, my mods do a better job of running it. But if you need a guild, highly recommend Reassemble. Very, very good. Now let's go over the specific, like, consumables for PvP. I know this is the one that everybody wants to talk about anyway. Let's do T1, T2 Node Wars. Okay. I cannot emphasize this enough. If you are trying to optimize an elixir rotation for T1 and T2 Node Wars, please reconsider what chastity belt that you are wearing, okay? Because I guarantee you don't have high enough quality. All right. You really should not be using elixirs in T1, T2 Node Wars. If you are, it's because you're a virgin and you just want to shit on new players who don't know what a super armor is. And that is totally fine, but just understand that you are actually worse than they are, because they're the only players that you can kill, and you've been playing the game for 6 years more than they have. So, and they will kill you soon. Okay. So T1, T2 Node Wars, I recommend honestly just popping a draft. I recommend a Giants draft. It's just all special attack damage. All you want in T1, T2 Node Wars are just special attack damage if you can get it really cheaply. Okay. T1 Node Wars, I think, are capped at like 4k or 4,500, and T2s are capped at 5k HP. So, like, make sure you're hitting the HP cap. And if you're not, you can use Spirit Perfume Elixir to kind of push yourself there. But most of the time, it's going to be crystals, and then your HP journals will kind of get you over the top there. You won't really have to worry about it too much. Now we're going to go over, again, like, I'm not going to recommend anything in the guide that is like T1 Node War elixirs. That's stupid. But if you're going to run elixirs for T1, you're just going to look at my T3, T4 elixir elixirs, and you're just going to run those instead. Okay. So on the screen here, you guys don't see it, but on YouTube, they will see it, is the list of elixirs that I recommend for T3, T4. We're going to go through them one at a time right now. Elixir of Strong Shot. Again, you are not running a draft if you're running elixirs. Okay, this is capped PvP. All right. If you're running elixirs, you need to make sure you're hitting +5 crit. Elixir of Shock is necessary, or is really, really good at making sure you hit +5 crit. Very, very good elixir. And again, we're running blue grades of all of these. Merciless Sky Elixir. This is not necessary. This is an elixir that, like, it is air attack damage. It is much better on certain classes, like Awakening Megu is really good with air attack damage, for example. But like other classes really aren't going to benefit too much from air attack damage. I pop it for posterity's sake, because it's just more damage. Can't hurt. A little bit more damage. Not Steel Defense. Do not pop Elixir of Steel Defense in capped PvP. Grim Soul Reaper's Elixir is plus 3 HP per hit. So like when you do damage to people, you will get HP back. You definitely want to be popping that. Clear Mentality. This is really only something that you're going to pop if you're a caster, because you get more max mana. You can pop it on other classes too, but it really only benefits Magical Shield overall. Endless Fury. This is not an elixir you're going to use for cap node wars, so do not pop Endless Fury. Advanced Concentration, again, accuracy. You are not popping this for cap PvP. Intrepid Swiftness, you absolutely are popping. Move speed plus 3 is very important. People underrate move speed in BDO. You want to make sure that you have plus 5 move speed when you're moving around all the time in a node war. You do this by making sure that the crystal that you have has a plus 2 move speed crystal in it, and then running Intrepid Swiftness. That gives you to plus 5. Okay. But what this is this regroup time. So if your shot caller is constantly bitching that you guys can't regroup fast enough, gotta run Swiftness. Okay, gotta make sure you have plus 5 move speed, okay? Because getting to pings, moving through pings, and it also saves you stamina too. Understand that if you're an iframe class, having more move speed outside of combat saves you stamina inside of combat. So like if I am running faster just by holding shift like this, and I get to the battle and I still have 90 stamina left, okay, well now I can go into combat with 90 stamina. If I have to hold shift for longer because I'm going slower and I only have 80 stamina when I get to the fight, okay, well now you have less iframes available to you, because iframes typically cost stamina in BDO. So now you have less stamina available to you. So like having plus 5 move speed is an extremely underrated way of getting stamina. Move speed equals stamina in a lot of cases in large scale PvP. Okay. Let's see. Brutal Perforation. This is defense nullifying damage plus 10 per back attack. Again, we're pretty sure that that means your back attacks are doing more damage. Strong Draining. Recover plus 5 HP per critical hit. Yep. Okay. Obviously, in cap PvP, definitely want that. Elixir of Perfect Human Hunt. Do not pop this in cap PvP. This is an uncapped PvP elixir. Do not pop that in capped. Lethal Assassin. This is arguably one of the best elixirs to pop in capped content, okay? In any PvP content whatsoever. Lethal Assassin is incredibly good. Back attack damage, especially if you are quite literally an assassin, like the elixir says. You're always going to be trying to get back attacks on people, especially if you're good at PvP. You definitely want to try to get in behind people. Sharp Detection is... most people consider this the best elixir. Obviously, I just said Lethal Assassin is one of the best. Sharp Detection is basically almost undisputedly the best. It's critical hit plus 15%. Okay? Keep in mind, this is not critical hit rate. This is critical hit damage. Critical hit damage and critical hit rate are two different things, guys. Critical hit rate can only go up to 100%. You can crit 100% of the time. Critical hit damage is how much damage you're doing when you crit. Okay? So if you're critting 100% of the time and you have 15% more crit damage, 15% more damage. If you're an Awakening Dark Knight, for example, everything in your Awakening kit already has 100% crit on it. So Elixir of Sharp Detection is literally just 15% more damage to all of your skills. It's an extremely good elixir. Very difficult to get your hands on, but you can kind of just buy it nowadays. Brutal Death is defense nullifying damage plus 10 for critical hit. Again, this means that your crits are doing more damage. We think. Okay. Lethal Destruction is an extremely good elixir. This is all special attack damage plus 2%. So basically all your special attacks are doing 2% more damage. We talked about what special attacks were before, so I'm not going to go over again here. Down attack damage. This is Brutal Carnage. This is obviously an incredibly good elixir. You should absolutely be running this for capped content. It's pretty easy to get a hold of. As far as the recipes go, Carnage is pretty easy to make. Elixir of Strong Life is just max HP. Can't go wrong with that. That capped content is really good, unless you're T1, T2. Overwhelming Endurance is max stamina plus 150. Obviously, I run this even on my Witch, because again, I can run for longer periods. If I'm holding shift and trying to run and get back to a fight or whatever, I can run for longer periods with more maximum stamina. But that's not really required. It's not really a required elixir. But these are typically the elixirs that I'm running for PvP like this. If you're talking, and that's T3, T4 node wars. And for T3, T4 node wars, I run Spirit Perfume Elixir because the max HP plus 300 is really good, because there's no cap on the amount of HP that you can have in those node wars right now, as of the making of this video. The only other, like, technically the best in capped content is going to be the Elixir of Deep Sea, because again, that's special attack, or it's back attack, down attack, air attack damage plus 10%. That's really good. If you don't have Spirit Perfume Elixir, Calx Elixir is also a good go-to. We talked about this before. Calx is totally fine. Absolutely super fine. Okay. As far as artifact setups go, for capped content, I'm just going to make it easy for you guys. Just run 2 max HP artifacts with HP Lightstones in there. Obviously, if you have the really good artifact, Kabuas. If you have 2 Kabuas, you just put 4 HP in 2 Kabuas, and that's technically best in slot there. We will go over house buffs in a little bit more detail later, but the house buff that you're going to use for capped content is called the Master Special Stuffed Shadow Wolf Head. This is going to give you 3 hours of 100 max HP. This is really, really, really good. Okay. There are a couple other like buffs like this that will give you 100 HP for 3 hours, so it doesn't have to be this one. But like this is just the one that I use because hunters make this, and so it's readily available in the marketplace most of the time. And again, that's T3, T4. In uncapped content, you take all the elixirs that we just went over, and we're going to add the ones that I said to take out before, okay? So we're going to add Steel Defense, that's 10 DR, that's a slam dunk and uncapped. You're also going to add Endless Fury is really, really good because it's just flat AP plus 8. That you can't go wrong there. All Accuracy plus 12, that is incredibly good in uncapped content because a lot of people like to stack evasion, and you need to have as much accuracy as you can get. Another thing that you're going to be popping is the damage to humans. So Elixir of damage to humans is just other players. That's how you should see it. It also works against mobs too if they're technically human damage mobs. So you can use them in PvE as well if the mobs are human. But like obviously Perfect Human Hunt is really, really good. Yep. And those are the ones that you're kind of adding if it's uncapped PvP. So those are basically all the elixirs in the game that you are concerned about. There are a few other elixirs, but none that are really going to be relevant for PvP or PvE in very many ways. Okay, I think I banged through the whole consumables guide. That was pretty crazy. People have been asking for that for a while.